There is a mindset that most people carry into their first attempt at building AI income. It is one of the most reliable predictors of whether they will still be building 12 months from now or whether they will have quietly stopped. The mindset sounds like reasonable caution. It sounds like responsible preparation. But it is actually the primary thing standing between most experienced, intelligent adults and the income system they are capable of building. It sounds like this: I need to figure out exactly how this works before I commit to it. Or, I need to learn the tools properly before I can produce anything worth sharing. Or, I need to see evidence that this will work for my specific situation before I invest significant time in it. These are understandable positions, especially for someone who has made careful, deliberate decisions for decades and whose professional reputation is built on doing things right before doing them publicly. But they are the wrong positions for building a compounding income system from nothing. Because compounding income systems do not reward careful preparation. They reward motion. Here is why careful preparation fails at the start. You are accustomed to making important decisions after gathering sufficient evidence to justify them. You take on a new project at work after the scope is defined clearly enough to estimate the effort. You make a financial investment after doing due diligence. You commit to a major decision when the likely outcome is reasonably predictable. This is genuinely good judgment. It has served you well across a long career and probably saved you from costly mistakes multiple times. But building an income system from scratch does not have sufficient evidence available upfront. The evidence only exists on the other side of action. You cannot know whether your niche will resonate with an audience until you publish content and observe how that audience responds. You cannot know whether your product will sell until you offer it to real people and see whether they pull out their wallets. You cannot know whether your service will deliver value until you deliver it to a real client and receive honest feedback. All of the certainty you want is on the other side of action. Waiting for certainty before acting is waiting for something that only the act of starting can ever produce. The first mindset shift is from certainty to iteration. The mindset that actually builds compounding income systems is not "I will start when I am sure this will work." It is "I will start and use what I learned to get sure." The behavioral difference between those two positions is enormous. The person waiting for certainty delays indefinitely because certainty never arrives before you start. The person who commits to iteration begins immediately and uses the feedback from each action to build confidence progressively. Iteration produces evidence. Evidence produces confidence. Confidence produces better decisions. Better decisions produce better results. None of that sequence is available to someone waiting at the starting line for a certainty signal that will never come. The second mindset shift is what I call the permission shift. Most adults over 40 who are attempting to build income for the first time are unconsciously waiting for someone or something to give them permission. Permission to call themselves an expert. Permission to charge money for their knowledge. Permission to publish content publicly claiming to understand a topic. Permission to offer a service that someone might actually pay for. That permission is never going to arrive from an external source. Not from a certification. Not from a certain follower count. Not from a product review from a stranger. Not from reaching a particular income level. The only permission available is the permission you decide to give yourself. The decision that your experience is valid enough, your knowledge is specific enough, and your understanding is real enough to be genuinely useful to someone who does not have it yet. Because that is what this comes down to. Feeling ready is not a prerequisite for being useful. You are already useful. You have the knowledge that you developed over years or decades. You have the experience that someone earlier in their career needs and cannot get quickly. The person who needs what you know does not care whether you feel completely ready to share it. They care whether it helps them. And it will. The third mindset shift is the identity shift. And this is the deepest one. Most people who start building AI income think of themselves as people who are trying to build AI income. That identity, the trying identity, has a specific relationship with difficulty. When a video performs poorly, someone who is trying to build AI income concludes that they are not succeeding. When a month produces little income, someone who is trying to build AI income feels like the attempt is failing. But the people who eventually build meaningful AI income have made a different identity decision. They think of themselves as people who build a income as a consistent practice, not someone who is working toward it. Someone who does it regularly, even when individual results are disappointing, even when a month is slower than expected, even when a piece of content performs poorly. That identity shift changes everything about how you interpret and respond to difficulty. When you are a practitioner, a slow month is data. A video that does not perform is a learning signal. A product that does not sell immediately is an iteration opportunity. None of those experiences feel like failure because failure is not a meaningful concept for someone who treats this as a practice rather than a test. The frameworks are on this channel. The tools are accessible. The systems are documented. But none of them work without the underlying decision to act before you are certain, to create before you feel completely ready, and to show up consistently while the system is still in its early flat phase before the compounding becomes visible. That is not a discipline you either have or do not have. It is a choice you make repeatedly. Every time you open a blank document and produce something rather than researching something. Every time you send the outreach message before you feel completely confident in your offer. Every time you hit publish despite the internal voice asking whether this particular piece is good enough. Those individual choices, made consistently over 12 to 18 months, are what builds the system. Not the specific tools you use, not the exact framework you follow. The repeated choice to act rather than prepare. The AI Content System Starter Kit in the description gives you a clear structure that makes it easier to take that first action and every action after it. The link is in the description. And the free AI Catch-Up Calculator in the description gives you the financial context that makes every action feel purposeful rather than abstract. The link is in the description. There is one more dimension of the identity shift worth addressing because it affects how you handle the inevitable difficult moments. At some point in the first year of building AI income, something will go wrong in a way that feels significant. A video will get negative comments that are harsh or dismissive. A product launch will produce fewer sales than you hoped. A client will not renew. An outreach campaign will produce no responses for 3 weeks in a row. How you interpret those moments depends almost entirely on the identity you have built around your work. If you identify as someone who is trying to build AI income, these moments feel like evidence about whether you are succeeding. And the natural response to evidence of not succeeding is to question whether to continue. Every difficult moment reopens the question of whether this is going to work. If you identify as a practitioner, someone who builds AI income as a consistent practice, these moments feel like information rather than verdicts. The harsh comments tell you something about where your content is missing its mark. The slow product launch tells you something about the positioning or the offer that needs to be refined. The dry outreach period tells you that this particular message or this particular audience is not the right fit and it is time to adjust the approach. Same difficult moment. Completely different internal experience and completely different response. The practitioner identity does not make the difficult moments feel good. It makes them feel useful. And useful is all you need them to be to keep moving forward. Decide explicitly what you are, not what you are trying to become. What you are right now, as of today. A person who builds AI income as a consistent practice, write it down, return to it when the difficult moments arrive, let it be the identity that stays stable when the circumstances are unstable. That stability is the psychological infrastructure that makes long-term compounding possible.